Our friends at Meta kill off misinformation tracking tool Crowdtangle, despite pleas from researchers and journalists. Facebook and Instagram parent Meta Platforms has shut down Crowdtangle, a tool widely used by researchers, watchdog organizations, and journalists to monitor social media posts, notably to track how misinformation spreads on the company's platforms. Wednesday's shutdown, which Meta announced earlier this year, has been protested by researchers and nonprofits. In May, dozens of groups, including the Center for Democracy and Technology, the Digital Forensic Research Lab at the Atlantic Council, Human Rights Watch, and NYU's Center for Social Media and Politics, sent a letter to the company asking that it keep the tool running through at least January so it would be available through the US presidential elections. The decision jeopardizes essential pre- and post-election oversight mechanisms and undermines Meta's transparency efforts during this critical period, and at a time when social trust and digital democracy are alarming fragile, the letter said. In March, the nonprofit Mozilla Foundation sent Meta a similar letter asking to keep the tool, which is available for free, functioning until January. The letter was also signed by several dozen groups and individual academic researchers. Meta has released an alternative to Crowdtangle called the Meta Content Library, but access to it is limited to academic researchers and nonprofits, which excludes most news organizations. Critics have also complained that it is not as useful as Crowdtangle, at least not yet. Nick Clegg, Meta's president of global affairs, said in a blog post last week that the company has been gathering feedback about Meta Content Library from hundreds of researchers in order to make it more user-friendly and help them find the data they need for their work. Meta said Wednesday that Crowdtangle doesn't provide a complete picture of what's happening on its platforms and said its new tools are more comprehensive. This is from ABC News. So, very interesting tool. Obviously, most of our viewership, and including us, we don't spend a ton of time analyzing data like this and tracking what is misinformation and what is not misinformation. I wouldn't consider us journalists. I wouldn't consider us researchers. We're definitely not a nonprofit. We are not using these types of tools every day. Some things obviously don't pass the smell test. But yeah, fake news is obviously a problem. News is easily manipulated online. There's lots of people, believing things that they shouldn't believe. In the age of using AI to generate content,
there's such a flood.
That's just rampant. I mean, I see tons of it. I see whether it's political content or it's all kinds of content that is being manipulated, and those actors are fairly unknown because you're not digging into who's this post from? It's just in your feed. Is it funny? Okay, great, but that does have a psychological impact on potentially some audiences. So, especially for younger audiences or older audiences that are more susceptible to just consuming content and not questioning it.
So understanding what a big problem
wild
this is.
Yeah.
Misinformation online is huge.
Wild.
Facebook or Meta is stripping away a tool to deal with it. It sounds like their new tool might be okay. I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll see.
It's new.
Yeah.
And new means the bugs haven't worked out yet. But new is sometimes good too.
So big picture, can we trust platforms and the companies that own those platforms to prevent misinformation?
There's a specific rule, especially in the States, that these platforms love hiding behind. And they are not a publisher. A publisher is held responsible for the content on their platform. If they were ruled publishers, there would be all kinds of lawsuits, there'd be all kinds of things, and we would be able to trust them because there's no way it would fly. They would have to guarantee. So they're not a New York Times is a publisher. It has to stand behind the things that it says.
Yep.
And they're susceptible to all kinds of lawsuits and cases and things like that. If New York Times puts a post on Facebook, Facebook is not the publisher. Facebook is the platform. If what New York Times or any other news that says is incorrect or slander or whatever, if they get things wrong, it's not Facebook that's held liable. It is New York Times.
Well, and I would even argue that if they were a publisher, we still couldn't trust them.
Oh no,
to prevent misinformation because companies change ownership.
Companies have agendas. Companies can, there's all kinds of things. Pick a thing.
We see newspapers and television providers changing ownership, and then we start to see
different
views.
Our policies say this. It's who sets the policies? The company sets the policies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So trust is most platforms have some kind of moderation or some kind of trust factor or something like that. This is interesting. I find this interesting because Meta kills off misinformation tracking tool Crowdtangle. I don't know why you just wouldn't run two. Here's the one that's from Meta, and here's Crowdtangle, and you've got two competing technologies.
No, I believe Crowdtangle was Meta's feature. It's a feature.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes, that is it.
To replace with
so
an
like
updated
I would run.
So
both.
there's lots of reasons to get rid of the feature. Maybe it was expensive.
Could have been.
Right? Like it's tough to say.
Yep.
I don't know. I generally speaking,
It is.
even
It is theirs. Yeah.
even with this technology in the mix, I still wouldn't be leaning on the platforms for a crucial tool like this when trying to determine the legitimacy of content.
I completely agree with that.
It's
like
I would love to be able to trust those companies fully to not mess with any of the data, be totally above board and transparent about everything, not pull the rug on the technology that you're using, but you just can't count on that.
there's a meme. We've conducted an internal investigation and found we have done no wrong.
Oh yes.
It's like, well, that's not how investigations and data should, and that's true of everyone. And I'm sure we can think of a few organizations, but that's not how it should work. It should be a third-party independent.
Even if the tool is awesome and transparent and you can trust it because they're just passing on raw data and leaving it up to you to interpret, well, they can still pull the plug on that tool and discontinue it. So like, I wouldn't be relying on that at the end of the day to figure out how truthful the content on any given platform is. There are tools out there that work fairly well. So one of our discussion topics, what are the best tools for fighting misinformation online?
Oof.
I really like what X.com, formerly Twitter, has done with the community notes.
Community notes is a good one.
Right?
Yep.
It's not perfect because you can still dive into a community note and use it to present misinformation if you've got enough people behind you and you're like brigading a post. But the fact that they have that option to call suspicious content into question and make it very visual is a really cool feature. It's rumored that YouTube is contemplating doing the same thing with videos.
That is super cool. I'd say one of the best ones is just like the stuff that happens through Wikipedia.
Yeah. User moderated.
User moderated, heavily documented. You go and you look in the footnotes, you are finding what's there. There's a lot that goes into making sure what is listed is accurate.
And that's an interesting point because with the Wikipedia example, what makes it work is that they're listing their sources. And if you wanted to, you could go visit all of those sources and find out what information is, where the information is coming from. And you can tell for yourself if you trust those sources and if it's legitimate. I don't know how many people actually do click through those links to find the information, but it's astonishing.
It's available.
What a great platform Wikipedia is for capturing the raw information on any given topic.
This year's going to be a fun year. And fun is a relative term. There's just a lot going on. Whether it works out, it works out. But like something like this is definitely, there's got to be tools in place because, and I mean, without getting into any conspiracy theories here, there's obviously a big election happening in the States this year.
Yep.
There's a big election happening in Canada the year after.
The full article delves into that in a little more detail.
Yeah.
One of the big reasons people have asked Meta to push back the changeover is to get through the election.
To get through and you know what? The U.S. election, great. Yeah, they're a bigger superpower than Canada is. Canada's the election in 2025 is just as important for Canadians as the U.S. election is to them.
Yep.
So like, great, they're going to have a lot of the the lobbying power to try and get this extended to January, but it should be for every election. Period. Like in all of the democratic companies across the world, Meta plays a part in those results. Period. Not just the U.S. It's happening all over the place. These are global platforms. So like, let alone the States, something needs to happen because when there are elections worldwide, whether it be in Germany or Canada or the United States, the amount of misinformation is wild.
Oh yeah.
I've got some favorites. Like they're hilariously fun and great. And again, AI is only making that worse. You've seen fake burgers and fake food and fake products, fake everything.
Now, I will also say I don't hold it against Facebook or Meta that they scrap this feature. It's as useful as these tools are, and as much as we're saying don't trust the platform to be responsible for this, they are still a business at the end of the day.
They are.
And if they felt like this feature was costing them money or not making them enough money, well, fair enough. That's up to them. And like, yes, the businesses are going to represent their own best interests, but that's their job. They should represent their own best interests.
Yep.
And we need to look for.
So what happens in that case? What happens in that case when you've got a corporation that is trying to make money, and they're able to do things that they're able to do? We have this wonderful system called the government that should have to step in and pass laws.
Yeah.
To change things. That's the only thing that way actually these things actually gets changed is through a democratic process. Some government body passes some laws that force corporations and businesses to comply with that new law, and then they have to do or be held liable for the consequences of not doing that. That's how this works. So we should not be leaving it up to Meta or any business to just say we're going to do the right thing because it's in our hearts.
Yeah.
No, we should be making it a law saying, well, it's good. It's part of your ethics. Great. I'm glad your ethics are as such.
And now you have to enforce it.
But it's also against the law to not do it. So like, great for you being a good actor, but like if you don't do it, or if there are bad actors out there, they have to be held to that regard. So I would love to see that out of our government.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that all the time. Like accountability is a wonderful word that should be enforced more often. And these big platforms have the money. So like, again, when you say like, oh, well, it was costing a bunch of money, I could tell you, I could make a Google search and a half and find out what their revenue was and what their profitability was.
Oh yeah.
And they've got the money. This isn't putting pressure on a small business to say, you got to go spend every dollar and take out a loan. No, they've got the money already. These are the titans of industry that have built this infrastructure. They have the resources to do this better. I would love to see government say, okay, we'll do it better.
Absolutely.
Do it better.
We're seeing governments stepping in and holding tech companies accountable.
Yep.
So it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. Do you have any final thoughts on, Meta killing off this tool, or
I've got
fighting misinformation online?
I've got a preview for next stream, and it's going to have to do essentially with this. The FTC, and this is like news as of like today, so we haven't dove into it yet, so the next stream we're going to touch on it.
Yep.
The FTC has governing body has put rules in place to actually ban fake online reviews.
Oh wow.
And this is going to affect platforms. This is going to affect a lot of businesses so that you cannot generate fake content and use that to manipulate.
It's going to be really, really difficult to enforce that on a lot of platforms.
It is. And there's lots of information coming out of this, so we're not quite ready to talk about it. This is like as of the last little bit, but the Federal Trade Commission, and it was unanimous vote. So we're going to get into that at a later time, but it's good to start seeing, and that's kind of the segue into the government doing things and the governing bodies. It's only beneficial to real life people, the neighbors that you've got, everyone in society, if there's more accountability online.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see that in every aspect, in government policy, in advertising, in news, in everything. If I could go online and you could actually trust it, how cool would the internet be if you went online and you could say that article, I don't have to worry about that article having like got to read between the lines, how much misdirection is this? Is this, should I believe this? Because every article I read right now, I have to apply a grain of salt to it. It's more than a grain of salt now. It's going like, what am I actually, am I being sold?
It's tricky. I mean, much comes from like a person making a joke on Reddit and then it being repeated over and over and over again by different sites. And now no one has any idea if it's true or not.
Yeah.
There was all that controversy around Ray Gun, the breakdancer in the Olympics, supposedly cheating and committing a bunch of fraud to get her seat in the Olympics. And then currently, the latest news is that was debunked.
Yeah, it was all debunked. Sell some clicks.
Yep.
And nobody. Well, there are the only people that profit are bad actors.
Oh yeah.
And I don't like seeing that. That doesn't, again, completely self-centered on this target. That makes marketers and advertisers look terrible.
Yep.
That is not good for the industry we work in.
We've said it before. We're 2H Media. We like good things. We're against bad things.
Yeah.
We're in favor of transparency, and we're against misinformation.
Yeah. Throughout. So all of it. So, I'd love to, again, we're going to end up circling back on this as well, because what the outcomes of this are going to be, especially with an election this year, there's going to be all kinds of things where
we may not circle back on the Meta thing specifically.
maybe not the